Hi everyone, my name is Abriza Jaws and I work as a doctor in the NHS. I want to thank you all again for joining us today for our second edition of Frequently Asked Questions on the Road to UK. Today we're going to try and tackle more of the questions that you've all submitted. If unfortunately we don't answer one of your questions today, don't worry. If you just look in the description box below, there'll be a link that you can follow where you can submit your questions and we'll try and get to it as soon as possible. So let's get started. Okay, so before you do anything else, before you can even think about getting to the UK, you have to pass PLAB 1. And what a lot of times people want to know is what is the best way to prepare. So you'll know there are a lot of materials out there, but I think I speak for everyone when I say this, the crux of PLAB 1 is the 1700s. It is a great compilation of past questions that have been put together. They've given explanations, they've given their answer choices, but the thing is, you can't expect everything verbatim to follow the 1700s when you have your exam. You'll find that a lot of the questions will be very similar, or you'll find a lot of the topics will cross over. But don't expect, again, that word for word the exam will follow the questions of the 1700s. The important thing about the 1700s is to understand the question, to understand the answers, and to understand why the correct responses are correct and why the incorrect responses are incorrect. This isn't a memorization game. You shouldn't just go through the questions and try and memorize the answer to every question and expect that's how you're going to pass the exam. There are, of course, paid materials, and whether or not you choose to buy any of them is to your discretion. But you need to keep in mind that, a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, I use such and such material and I got, 175 out of 180, because 180 is the maximum number of questions in the exam. Well, maybe you'll know somebody else who didn't use paid materials and they got 150, and you're thinking to yourself, well, hold up, if I use paid materials, I'll get 175. Why should I settle for 150? Let me tell you one thing. For the most part in life, you shouldn't settle, but for something like the PLAB 1, where passing is just as good as anything else in this exam, they do not care about if you made perfect score or if you just got by on whatever the passing score was that year. They don't care. You just need to pass the exam. If you are, however, really competitive and you want to make that 180, go for it. You can make that 180. But don't feel obligated to buy things just because somebody's telling you you only need that or that's the only way you'll pass. The 1700s are a very good foundation for understanding the exam. If you need clarifications, of course, there are things like Patient Info. It's a great website and it's free and it'll help you explain things. Or things like the Oxford Handbook. Of course, those are the crux for anything related to either surgery or medicine or obs-gynae. A lot of times we want to know, should we look at stuff like anatomy, physiology, biochemistry? They don't really cover those things in depth in the exam, so it's not something that you need to really, really fixate yourself with. 1700s are enough. Using the mocks that you can find also are very, very useful, because what a lot of the times people find out when they get to the actual exam is they don't have enough time to answer all their questions, and that's how people end up failing. It's because they haven't finished all their questions in time, not that they didn't use the right kind of material. So remember that time management is extremely important, doing mocks, reviewing before the exam is over. I would at least say you want to go through the 1700s twice before you actually sit for the exam, if at all possible, so that you really feel that you're fully prepared. Okay, so a lot of the times people want to know, well, how much time should I dedicate to my preparation of PLAB 2? And this is an important question because you've got a 6-month visa, and whether or not you've had any course before it or you had any other things that you needed to do after the fact, you need to kind of, scratch out how much time you want to dedicate to this. So I would say, considering how things are changing right now with PLAB 2, you want to at least give a minimum of 4 to 6 weeks in order to prepare yourself fully for the exam. The reason I say this is anything less than that tends to be, not enough time to really review properly. There are some of us, like for me, for instance, I only spent 10 days, and that was because I'm one of those people who needs to work under pressure. If I gave myself a lot of time, I probably wouldn't prepare as well as I would under pressure. So take that into consideration. If you're somebody that works under pressure, then make sure that you are putting yourself in that situation so that you ideally prepare for the exam. If, however, you need a little extra time, it's not a race. Spend as much time as you need to prepare for this exam because it is an expensive exam and it is an important exam. At the same time, try not to put your exam really, really far away. I know some people who need they say, okay, I'm going to put 2 to 3 months. That's how long I'm going to take to, prepare for this exam, and that is too much time. The reason for that is you can become very comfortable with these stations and how you're preparing. And the most important thing to remember about the PLAB 2 exam is you're not memorizing anything. You shouldn't be memorizing anything. You're a doctor, they are the patient. You should just be able to be comfortable in how you approach and assess the situation that you are put in each station. If you get to a point where you're like, oh, I know that station by heart, you're not doing things right. You need to make sure you are natural and you are a person, and that is the most important thing when it comes to your PLAB 2 preparation. So once you started your visa application for PLAB 2 after you've booked your exam, you need to start thinking about where you're going to stay in the United Kingdom. It's very important that you know it ahead of time, mainly because you won't even get a visa if you haven't figured out where your accommodation is. And secondly, you don't want to land in the UK and not have a place to stay, because it's very cold here and it's not any fun if you haven't any place to stay. So the things that you have to keep in mind when you're trying to find an accommodation is how long you plan to be in the UK. First and foremost, if you're only staying for a month or less, I would suggest Airbnb, mainly because it is a safe tenancy agreement. You are covered, they are covered, whoever's renting out to you, and it's safe because you know that they've already checked into who these people are. What you should also keep in mind is that the Airbnb is somewhere nearby wherever you're staying. If you haven't opened an Airbnb account before, we have a voucher that we've linked in the description box below. It'll take off £25 from your first stay. So it's pretty useful. You save a little money on that. But keep in mind, of course, that the Airbnb is nearby where you want to stay, and you can get in a lot of good amenities when you search for the Airbnb. If you can see if you've got a flat to yourself, if there's a private bathroom, if you have any shared living accommodations. So it's very good and it's very flexible. If, however, you're staying for more than a month, or you're kind of unsure about how long you're going to stay, you don't want to fix into something that isn't a little bit flexible. So you can look into websites like spareroom.com. There you can kind of put up a profile of what you're looking for. For instance, since I'm a girl, I obviously want to stay in a girl-only accommodation. So that's what I put in when I looked for a place to stay. That, okay, there's only going to be girls there. You know, maybe you don't want pets. Maybe you don't want people that smoke. Anything you want, you can put that in the profile, and then you can look accordingly to people who match up to what you need. Beyond this, there are sometimes travel lodges, other short or long-term hotels that are nearby a lot of the academies. So you can see if you're going with people you know, or if you can find people that you know, guys can share a accommodation in one of those rooms, and those do just fine too for short-term stays. Then you don't have to worry about, paying over a long-term rent if you're not really sure about where to go. But essentially, if you need any more information or any further explanation about accommodations, we've also linked our blog post below about finding an accommodation in the UK, so hopefully you should have no trouble. So a lot of people ask if they can take PLAB 2 before PLAB 1. This is a very, very common question, and you might be surprised. You might be thinking to yourself, well, why would anyone think you could take PLAB 2 before you could take PLAB 1? And the reason for that is the UKMLA does work that way. You can take Step 2 before you can take Step 1. So people are like, well, why can't that work in the United Kingdom? Unfortunately, they do not allow you to take PLAB 2 before you've cleared PLAB 1, and you can't even take PLAB 1 until you've cleared IELTS or OET. So make sure whenever you're thinking about taking the steps towards the road to UK and completing your PLAB journey, that you follow the steps in order. IELTS or OET, then PLAB 1, then PLAB 2. So a lot of us are very concerned about when the PLAB will become the UKMLA. Because we don't have that much information about the UKMLA, I can understand why a lot of us might be concerned about if the exam changes. Will the exam become more difficult? Will they not allow IMGs anymore? What exactly will happen? Well, let me just tell you so far what we have. The UKMLA, or the United Kingdom Medical Licensing Assessment, as per the GMC website, will become live for IMGs and for all medical students graduating from the United Kingdom in 2022. Now, this doesn't mean that if you sit for the November 2021 PLAB 1 that you have to worry about UKMLA. It also doesn't mean that doesn't necessarily mean that won't happen. The thing is, GMC hasn't said anything further aside from the fact that it will roll out in 2022. So what you need to be most concerned about is finishing your PLABs before 2022 if possible, or if you know you will graduate from your medical college by 2022, just keeping an eye out on the GMC website for the information that they give about the UKMLA and staying updated accordingly. So the first question you actually need to ask yourself before you decide about doing internship in the United Kingdom is, have you completed an internship back home? If the answer to that is yes, the next thing you need to ask is the internship that you completed an acceptable pattern of internship as laid out by the GMC? If the answer to both of these questions is yes, you will not even be allowed to do an internship in the United Kingdom because you've already fulfilled the criteria set out by GMC and they will accept it. Now, If you haven't completed an internship, or if your internship is not accepted by the GMC, you might consider doing internship in the United Kingdom in the UKFPO, their foundation program. The thing about it is it's extremely competitive for IMGs to get into, unless you already have a settled visa status. That being said, that doesn't mean if you don't have a settled visa status, you can't get in. It's just, like I said, extremely competitive, and you have to make sure there are spots that are available for you to get into. There have been IMGs in the past who haven't had settled visa statuses who have managed to get into the UKFPO because they got lucky, there were spots open. So, all I want to say about this is don't bank on getting into an internship in the UK if you don't have one already. Try if you can to get into an internship in your home country or in a neighboring country, because it'll be much easier and less expensive and less stress if you can do that. Okay, this is probably the most asked question, and the reason for that is everyone is always concerned about the money. Yes, I know we didn't become doctors to make a lot of money, but it is good to get paid. And good news, as doctors in the UK, you do get paid. You would be surprised how many people have asked us if doctors get paid in the UK. Yes, I want to say this very clearly. You will be paid to work as a doctor in the United Kingdom. I think where the confusion lies is people think you will only get paid if you get into a training program, but that's not true. Even as a non-training doctor, taking into consideration your experience and whatever else attributes that you have to offer, you will get paid accordingly to that level, and it will be a good pay. It will be a comfortable pay. Now, I know a lot of you did ask stuff like, well, I have a family of 3, I have a family of 4, I have a family of 6. Will my pay be sufficient? Honestly, this all comes down to your budget. How well you can budget your money, and of course where you're living. If you're living in a big city, things will be more expensive and you'll have to take into those costs into consideration. If you're living in a smaller town, obviously the costs will not be as bad, but there's never going to be a time where you will think that you are completely destitute. And the reason I say that is because the pay here is enough to live by, and if you save and if you budget well, you will be able to continue, and so will your family if you have any family that you're bringing along with you. Now, if you want a full breakdown in order to understand about a doctor's salary in the UK, please check in the description box below where we've talked about a doctor's pay in the UK. Thank you so much for watching today, guys, on our second episode of Frequently Asked Questions on the Road to UK. I hope we managed to answer your question today, but again, if in case we did not, please check in the description box below where we have linked our form where you can submit any questions that you may have. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and like us on Facebook, and stay tuned for more questions to be answered in the future.